just as the United States Supreme Court's decision in Dred Scott in 1857 declared that blacks had no rights that any white man was bound to respect, so the United States has always behaved as if the darker peoples of the world have no rights that the U.S. is bound to respect. We should never gloss over the deep racism that pervades American culture and the general American worldview. This deep racism causes huge segments of the American public to reflexively reject any sort of compact with the rest of the world, any sort of compact, especially with the non-white world, just as they have historically rejected any real social compact with their own non-white countrymen and women. As we touched on earlier, it is Black America that has historically been the constituency in the United States that is most inclined to internationalism, to have solidarity with oppressed people around the globe. No sooner was there a United Nations in New York and a flowering body of international laws that govern the treatment of the weak by the strong than Black Americans in large numbers rallied to the We Charge Genocide campaign, which was designed to indict the United States for high crimes and misdemeanors against African Americans. Malcolm X set a whole generation of blacks on an internationalist path when he urged them to put the U.S. in the defendant's seat under the auspices of the United Nations. The last thing that Black Americans have wanted in our sojourn in North America is that the United States be the final arbiter of justice in the world, because we know how that story ends. African Americans have long wished that there was some international bar of justice out there to overrule this white man's government until it became a certain black man's government. Since 2008, African Americans have been politically neutralized by the presence of a black man in the White House. Much of organized Black America will not raise their voices to defend themselves, much less anyone else in the world, including Africa, because to defend Africa from U.S. aggression and from constant destabilization would be to indict Obama. And that is something that the vast bulk of African Americans will not do. However, one presidency does not, and it cannot, alter the essential character of a people. In my own experience, the most dramatic and quantifiable measure of African American solidarity with other peoples in the world came in February of 2003. It was the sharpest contrast between Black America and not just white America, but also Latino America. In February of 2003, the Zogby polling organization asked the question, and this was about 3, maybe 4 weeks before the United States invaded Iraq. That question was, would you favor a U.S. invasion of Iraq if it would result in the death of thousands of Iraqi civilians? Large majorities of American white males responded, yes, the death of thousands of Iraqi civilians should not stand in the way of the U.S. invasion. And a majority of white women also felt that way. And so did a little less than a majority, a little less than half of the Hispanic Americans who were surveyed. But Black America's response was totally different. Only 7% of African Americans were willing to support an invasion that would cost the lives of thousands of Iraqi non-combatants. And 7% is a negligible figure. I have seen no better evidence of the vast gulf that separates the Black American worldview from that of white America and even from Latino or Hispanic America. However, that great mass of internationalist and compassionate black voices is largely paralyzed by its loyalty to Obama. And so as long as there is a black man in the White House, we cannot, unfortunately, count on black America raising its internationalist political voice. This could not come at a worse time for Africa, where the U.S. humanitarian military offensive has been on full throttle under both President Bush and now under President Obama, and where a rogue international criminal court has made U.S. foreign policy its guiding factor in its prosecutorial agenda. The International Criminal Court is an annex of the imperial order. It is the prosecutorial and judicial arm of Washington's war against international law, and it masquerades as the new dawn of justice. The ICC is a selective prosecutor that shelters mega criminals like Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni. Kagame is now portrayed as the savior of the human catastrophe that he initiated in Rwanda, and who then set in motion the convulsions that led to the death of 6 million Congolese, the greatest loss of human life since World War II. He is one of Washington's 2 key men in Black Africa. The other is Yoweri Museveni. Ronald Reagan called him his favorite guerrilla leader. He is credited with introducing the use of child soldiers in African conflicts. And together, Museveni and Kagame have sown the chaos that the United States always attempts to impose on those regions of the planet that it cannot directly control. Kagame and Museveni were the agents of Washington's chaos in the Congo, and they profited mightily from it. Yet Uganda, which was found guilty by the World Court for invading the Democratic Republic of Congo, has never paid for its crime, and neither has Rwanda. Ethiopia, backed to the hilt by the United States, invaded Somalia in 2006 and set off what United Nations observers called the worst humanitarian crisis in Africa, worse than Darfur. But at the very same time that millions of Somalis were being displaced and tens of thousands were being killed, the United States was heralding that operation as part of its humanitarian intervention in Africa. That is madness, but it's the kind of madness that must result and that will repeatedly result when the world's superpower wages war against peace and attempts to pass off its own hegemonic agenda as the new international law, when in fact it is precisely the opposite of international law. But you, of course, you are the lawyers, you're the activists, you are the frontline fighters for a world in which peoples and nations are joined in a compact of equality and of fairness and of justice, that is, of international law, which is the only route to such a compact. The principal enemy of international law today is U.S. imperialism. We will not defeat U.S. imperialism by waving laws in its face, but that is not the point. The law is what we fight for because it is the basis of the new world that must be born out of the defeat of the U.S. empire. Thank you. Power to the people.